We hear often on this floor that budgets are about values. Madam Speaker, one of my values is that I don't think the state should virtue signal on the backs of working Washingtonians. Unfortunately, the Climate Commitment Act does not do much more than virtue signal. A recent study came out showing that it is responsible for just 0.0008% of global climate reductions. It does virtually nothing. Recently, the Department of Ecology produced a map showing where CCA funds have been deployed by legislative district. Do you know what the CCA is funding in my district, Madam Speaker? Climate planning positions with city governments and one EV charging station at one apartment. That is not reducing our carbon output. That is employing a few more public employees and giving one apartment complex a few more electric vehicle chargers. That is the definition of virtue signaling, Madam Speaker. But the worst part, it's not just that this body, through the Climate Commitment Act, chose to virtue signal, it chose to do so on the backs of working Washingtonians, and that is something this budget amendment would undo. I don't know about your district, Madam Speaker. It might be somewhat like mine. My district is not particularly wealthy. A lot of my neighbors commute to jobs in Seattle and Bellevue through an hour of traffic every day. I have neighbors that are teachers in Bellevue, police officers in Redmond, paralegals in downtown Seattle. I am sure they would love to live closer to their working class jobs, but they cannot afford to do so because of the land use decisions by this state. But that is another topic that is not germane to the one at hand. But however, what they are doing is they are forced to spend hours a day in a car commuting to their jobs, away from their families, and putting gas in their cars to do so. They would love to spend less on gas, as the Climate Commitment Act wants them to do, but they can't. They're forced to live far away, and their demand for gasoline is extremely inelastic. So in order to fund the Climate Commitment Act, we have asked my constituents to spend ungodly amounts of money on gasoline. We in Washington State charge on an average of $1 more per gallon for gas than our neighbors next door in Idaho do. Of course, we would love to reduce carbon, but Madam Speaker, my constituents cannot afford to move any closer. They have to consume that amount of gas just to get to their jobs, just to make ends meet, just so they can afford to live in one of the most expensive states in the country, thanks to the actions of this body. This amendment would be one very small step towards doing something to deliver real affordability relief for our constituents who need it most. I heard a minute ago from the gentlewoman from the 22nd District that this Climate Commitment Act was unanimously approved by the voters of Washington. That's not true, and it certainly was not approved by a majority of voters in my district. They are crying out for tax relief. This is one way that we can do it, Madam Speaker. Please vote yes.